Hello and welcome to the opening venue of the 1993 Formula 1 Championship in Kyalami. This South African circuit will bring great challenge to all the drivers on the grid, as it will also give us an impression on the pecking order of the field. We make our debut in this Grand Prix with Larrousse, and we'll be hoping for a fairly straightforward race with the qualifying objective to outqualify our teammate Philippe Alliot, and the race objective of just reaching the checkered flag. Before we move over to qualifying though, it's time to look at the news of the week. This section of the video is dedicated to the news of the week, where you will be caught up on all the important information in the world of Formula 1, including car upgrades, as well as driver rumours and transfers. There isn't an awful much to talk about after the pre-season test at Paul Ricard, but we shall start at Williams, who have been marked as the favourites, with Alain Prost voted as the most likely to take his 4th World Drivers' Championship, holding a 62% majority voted by you guys. The Frenchman is also confident in his chances, stating that it will be tough, but with myself, Damon and all the Williams crew, we should be able to win. Meanwhile at Footwork, there's already looming pressure on the Japanese driver Aguri Suzuki, who didn't show amazing pace in pre-season testing. While his signature keeps the Mugen-Honda engine at the team, his seat still isn't certain. That's all for the news of the week. Now let's head into qualifying. Hello and welcome to the first qualifying session of the season here at the Kyalami circuit. We're wasting no time and getting straight out there on circuit, getting up to grips with this car. And yeah, we're doing a post-commentary sort of thing, and I've not really done anything like this before. So yeah, we're coming on to our first qualifying lap, rounding the final corner. And this first sort of run is kind of just bearing on how the car feels throughout the circuit, kind of a banker run more than anything, as this first section is so nice to drive through. Damon Hill there setting the fastest lap of the session so far, a 16.5, apologies, as we round the final corner for our first lap. We're doing double runs, so we're going to go for another run after this. The first run 19.0. This second lap though was much better from myself as we make our way into the chicane. As you can see, we're only 2/10 up, but I actually managed to hook up the last sector pretty nicely as we make our way into the final corner. We had a slight lock up into that final corner as well on the last lap, but fortunately we managed to get the braking right on point, and that's a 9/10 improvement, and 18.1 fetches us up the order quite nicely there, as we see. Yeah. Some of you also said that with the shadows in the preseason test, I've managed to get it fixed for the most part. I've set it to medium graphics, so it all looks normal on the regular game, but in the replays on my car it still looks a bit funky, as we see an epic drift into the pit lane by myself. I was so astonished by how I managed to keep that in a straight line that I forgot to actually turn the pit limiter on. That is very good from myself. We're halfway through the session now, and Damon Hill's still at the front. Surprisingly, that Alain Prost has not beaten his time yet. I'm kind of expecting that we'll hopefully be in somewhere in the midfield throughout the season, possibly scoring the odd occasional point, as we see there Alain Prost taking pole position away from his teammate by almost half a second. So the Frenchman really stretching his legs onto the first push lap of this second run, and we're starting to make mistakes, trying to eke out a bit more, going wide through the left-hander of 5 and then into the hairpin in the second sector. We also went wide, getting stuck on the curb. That's going to lose us a bit more time. As we saw there, second down, and that's a McLaren coming out the pits with an engine failure. We'll have to see who that is. It was Ayrton Senna coming out the pit lane. There's a bit... I didn't entirely record this correctly, so you'll have to bear with the low quality just for this clip. The rest of them will be fine for the majority. But yeah, Ayrton Senna is going to have to get back into the pits and get in the spare car if he wants to partake in qualifying any further. 2 tenths down on our second lap in this second run, and then we have a massive lock-up into the heaviest braking zone, I believe, on the entire circuit. And I think it's not really worth, at the last second, it's not really worth completing the lap, so we just box at the end of that one and cut it short. Anyway, here is our best lap in qualifying, the final run, and I'll leave you to watch this entire lap. So minus the Scuderia Italia getting in the way on that last lap, it was a very good lap indeed. It's only a 10th improvement, but it fetches us up a couple of positions, 13th at the moment. But with about 15 minutes remaining in the session, it'll be interesting to see if any more drivers improve, especially those at the front. We've not really seen anything from the likes of Michael Schumacher and Ayrton Senna, but it'll be, yeah, like I say, interesting to see where the pecking order is. I'm not entirely sure where Philippe Alliot is. He was behind me before that run, but we go on to the race. Hello and welcome to race day for the 1993 South African Grand Prix. We're just a few moments away from starting the first round of the championship as we now avert our eyes to the qualifying order. It was Alain Prost on pole position by 4.5 tenths ahead of his teammate Damon Hill on his Williams debut. Michael Schumacher essentially best of the rest ahead of Ayrton Senna, who is ahead of his teammate by 3/4 of a second, despite only setting his lap time in the spare car. Jean Alesi in 5th, with Rubens Barrichello, a brilliant qualifying on his debut in the Jordan, qualifies in 6th. Riccardo Patrese, Martin Brundle and Gerhard Berger follow him up, with Mark Blundell completing the top 10. Michael Andretti, as previously mentioned, starts 11th, with Eddie Irvine in 12th, and myself in 13th, beating Philippe Alliot in the qualifying. We see Johnny Herbert next up alongside us as an all British 7th row. Jyrki Yavoletto in the Sauber on their team's debut starts 15th ahead of my teammate Philippe Alliot. Derek Warwick on his return starts 17th ahead of Carl Wendlinger. Then it's the two Minardis on the 10th row of Fittipaldi and Barbazza. Alessandro Zanardi will be disappointed with that qualifying session, 21st for the Italian ahead of the two Tyrrells, Andrea de Cesaris and Ukio Katayama. Aguri Suzuki once again struggling for pace in 24th ahead of the lacking pace of the two Scuderia Italias of Luca Badoa and Michele Alboreto completing the grid, as we now line up onto the grid for the start of the 1993 season and this career mode as a whole. And yeah, we're waiting on the lights, and I start to realise that we are waiting here an awfully long time to actually await the lights to come out. And checking the replay now, there was a bit of a kerfuffle near the back, it seems, with Christian Fittipaldi. He qualified in 19th place. He is coming around the final couple of corners now. I was waiting on the grid for almost like 45 seconds. So they're now coming up to the grid, and we'll shortly get this race underway. There are the lights for the 1993 South African Grand Prix. The lights are green and there's racing to be seen. We get a little bit of wheel spin off the start and we lose out to both the Saubers immediately down towards turn 1. Philippe Alliot looking towards our inside. We don't want to crash with him. That would be terrible on our debut. He stays behind for now as we make our way into turn 3, make our way around the outside of Carl Wendlinger. There seemed to be an issue for one of the drivers near the back, but we've lost 2 places. It was Johnny Herbert with issues off the start. See what he did, he just didn't get moving. Must have stalled the engine with waiting that long on the grid, but he is the first retirement of the race. As Carl Wendlinger looking to the inside of Jyrki Arveleto, his teammate, can't quite get through. But we're just trying to settle in to our race, a 2-stop strategy we'll be doing in this Grand Prix. As we head now down into the downhill left-right, that is the scariest part of the entire circuit in my eyes, as there is a bit of issues for Katayama, I believe was said over the radio, and we are on board now with the Tyrrell Yamaha. His teammate Andrea de Cesus going wide through turn 5. Katayama looks down the inside, he catches the back of his teammate and is collected by Luca Badoa. On board with Luca Badoa, his debut race, and he didn't really have anywhere to go. He tried to stop his car in time, but it wasn't enough. Katayama's going to be out the race. Badoa requiring a new pit stop, a new front nose cone, sorry. As we see Wendlinger leaving the gap down the inside. We do try and get down the inside. We've run into the back of him a little bit there. Didn't expect him to brake so early. We're looking at the MFD and round we go. And distracted there by checking if we've got any damage. We do have a bit of damage, but we should be able to carry on without much of a fuss, down to 22nd position, and that's not a great start on our debut. We'll get a replay looking down the inside of Carl Wendlinger. He does leave us the room. He does get the better exits out the corner, and then there's the little bit of contact. I'm checking to see if the car is alright, and I think I just light it up over the curbs. I do, and round I go. That's going to be, it's a bit of a shame really, essentially, but we should be able to recover well. We've only lost a couple of seconds, as leading the first lap is the 2 Williams of Alain Prost, Damon Hill, Michael Schumacher behind Ayrton Senna, with Rubens Barrichello and Martin Brundle completing the top 6. As that is Alain Prost. Alain Prost over the radio has had an engine failure on lap 2. It's a terrible start, as the person who was expected to win this championship quite convincingly is out of the first round so early on, as we now just focus on trying to catch Aguri Suzuki lap after lap. There's a second gained on him at the end of lap 3. Lap 4 we've gained a couple of more tenths, and now by the mid part of lap 6 we're all over the back of the Footwork driver, trying to find a place to go down the inside, possibly into the hairpin. We are going to look down the inside. The Japanese driver does a good job of braking late enough so we can't really have an impressionable run, but we've had a great exit out of the hairpin, down the hill into the left, and then braking late on the right, down the inside, and we've locked the rears up. And that's another spin for us, another mistake. And it's certainly rookie errors, certainly showing up in their abundance. Yeah, and that's another mistake for us. It's not looking great right now. We certainly got pace, but we just need to find some consistency, is all that it is. A couple of laps later, lap 10. So it took us about 5 more laps to catch up to the back of Aguri Suzuki. We're going to look down the inside again, but we've done it again. We've messed up the braking zone, braking too late, locking up. Suzuki's gone straight back down the inside. He's got past. Next lap now. Again, Suzuki seems really weak out the exits of the hairpin, and we've got to run once again on the Footwork driver. Can we get to the outside of the right-hander? No, we're going to look to the inside again. This time, can we make it 3rd time's a charm? we can. We get alongside and then ahead of the Japanese driver. We finally managed to get an overtake done, and that's the first one of the race for us. And yeah, we just need to keep a calm head essentially and just manage our way through this race. There's no real rush to get overtakes done. It's a long race, 70 laps, and this track does not show overtaking opportunities kindly. It's quite a difficult track to overtake on. As Andrea de Cesaris, we close into the back of the Tyrrell within the next couple of laps. Lap 13, we've closed in about a second per lap as we see Jean Alesi. I believe that's Luca Badoa he's trying to overtake. And, and that's Luca Badoa cutting across Jean Alesi. And Jean Alesi has gone absolutely flying into the air, lost his front wing, is able to carry on. He's going to require a brand new front wing, as here's Eddie Irvine, and he's ran into the barriers. The inexperience of Eddie Irvine really showing there. He was trying to look round the outside, got washed out on the marbles, and he is going to be out of this race, as we now see Eddie Irvine out, Alesi into the box, and we're up into 18th position by the end of lap 14. Gerhard Berger here. I wonder what we're actually looking at this for. Seems like he's going a bit slow. Some sort of problem with his car. Some sort of mechanical problem, maybe a gearbox failure for Gerhard Berger, and it's absolute disaster for Ferrari with both cars in trouble so early on. And Berger is indeed out. He's 16th. We're up to 16th, sorry, as we see Wendlinger also in for his first stop of the race. And that's Andrea de Cesaris moving across on his line. I thought I saw him moving towards the inside of, I believe it was Barbazza he was trying to overtake, and then I couldn't do anything. I was taking the normal braking line because I thought he was going towards the inside. It'll be interesting to see what the stewards have to say about that. But yeah, we are ahead of Andrea de Cesaris for now, up to 15th place. As a couple of laps later, we see that, I believe that's Christian Fittipaldi on a heavy fuel load, really holding everyone up. Alessandro Zanardi's finally got through on both the Minardis. Barbazza's looking towards the inside into the final corner. Can we get the switchback on the both of them? Fittipaldi's gone wide. We almost run into the back of him. And now we've got the slipstream on Barbazza. That's one Minardi down. Can we get the other one round the outside of turn 2? No. We were going to run out of room there very quickly, and we were going to box at the end of that lap anyway, so there was no real point in risking the car for such an overtake, as we found out that neither myself or Andrea de Cesaris will be given a penalty for that, which is good to see. We're in for our first stop of the season, lap 21, and it's a 9-second stop, fetching us out in 17th position. Andrea de Cesaris did box after that incident. I don't believe he had damage, but it was more of a scheduled stop for him, as we've comfortably come out ahead of the Italian, as we now get lapped here by Ayrton Senna. He cut that close, making a bit of contact with us there on lap 22, as we now are looking just to try and close in the gap. Fabrizio Barbazza, who we were fighting earlier, is into the pits. It'll be interesting to see if we've possibly got the undercut on the Minardi driver, although being held up by Ayrton Senna wouldn't have done us any favours. He does come out just ahead of the McLaren, 2 seconds up the road. So he is going to remain in 16th place for now. We see Martin Brundle fighting Jyrki Jarveleto. I believe this is for 5th place, as Martin Brundle, looking towards the inside of turn 1, is clipped the back of the Sauber straight into the barriers, and Martin Brundle is out of the race, losing his rear wing. And that is not a good start of the season for Martin Brundle, his first race for Ligier, as there's more drama up ahead. I believe it involves Michael Andretti. Here he is in the McLaren on his debut. That's Martin Brundle without a rear wing. There's a bit of kerfuffling, and he's driven straight into the back of Mark Blundell. So Mark Blundell without a rear wing. Martin Brundle was going into the pits to retire. Mark Blundell's going to be out, so it's a double retirement and two Ligiers out in as many laps here in Kyalami. Martin Brundle, we get past, and it's a 10-second time penalty for the American of Michael Andretti. After that incident, we make our way past Andretti and Blundell. We're up into 14th now as we start to close in on Fabrizio Barbazza on board now with Carl Wendlinger. And that's a brake failure, certainly, for the Austrian. Oh, and he almost run straight into, I believe that was Derek Warwick in the footwork. Luckily, no one harmed in that, as we almost run into the back of Fabrizio Barbazza, making our way through the chicane. A couple of laps later, and we see Damon Hill. He's out with a problem, suspension problem, supposedly. And he is out of the race. He was fighting, I believe that's Riccardo Patrese, who hasn't boxed yet. And that's both Williams out of the race. So it's all to play for at the front between, I assume, Senna and both the Benetton drivers will be in contention now for victory as we make our way up to 12th position. Still behind Barbazza for now. And we're thinking about possibly making a move out of turn 3. I've realised that the AI aren't great at getting an exit out of there, and we've certainly made use of that, getting almost alongside Fabrizio Barbazza. We are alongside, going in towards turn 4. He holds it round the outside, however, and he's able to stay ahead for now. And yeah, we are desperate to get past Fabrizio Barbazza, as we see that Andrea de Cesaris is actually closing in, and we kind of don't want to beat him again in this race. We've already had an incident already with the Italian, as looking down the inside, the same place that we got past Aguri Suzuki, we can't quite get through. Now on lap 30, we're all over the back of the Minardi. We'll try it again, set it up out of turn 3. It's a brilliant exit from us, and we get in the slipstream, get out of it, and then pull alongside again with Barbazza. He's got a brilliant straight line speed though at the exit of that corner. Besides, we try the same move. He holds it round the outside once again, and he'll keep the place for now. 11th place is certainly looking like it could be ours eventually, as we once again, this is further back than we were before, but that's a brilliant move, possibly locking up, and we've got the place. That's a brilliant overtake down the inside, and we make our way into 11th place. I was very happy with that at the time. I had to I had to take a moment there, because that was a very sketchy move. I'm pretty sure we locked about 3 wheels up there, trying to get past Fabrizio Barbazza, but that is us up into 11th position, as we now see that Barbazza's not really leaving us alone, but thankfully, thanks to Michele Alboreto, where we've found him on the track, in terms of lapping him, we've kind of allowed ourselves to edge a bit of a gap out to the Italian behind. As we now see the leading pack after the first stint, Ayrton Senna currently leads ahead of Riccardo Patrese, who hasn't stopped in this race yet. That's the gap, just about 1 second. Michael Schumacher in third ahead of Yuki Yavaleto, Rubens Barrichello on his debut, and Christian Fittipaldi in the Minardi completing the top 6. As we see Jean Alesi, Aguri Suzuki and Philippe Alliot also in that fight. Christian Fittipaldi into the box at the end of lap 35. I assume he's on a one-stop strategy, and we start to close up on Alex Zanardi, and that's something. Alessandro Zanardi pulling off to the side of the road with a mechanical failure on board with the Lotus. I believe it was suspension issues for the Italian on his proper debut. He's only done a few races here and there with other teams, but that is going to be Zanardi's day over and done with. 9th place we're up to now, and behind Philippe Alliot, so we've pretty much made up the time up that we lost through the first couple of mistakes that we had throughout the first stint. As we now make our way onto lap 39, I believe we are now being lapped again by Senna, who I don't understand how he actually got behind us again, to be honest. Because we kind of both made only one stop, so it kind of has to assume that I have somehow outpaced him through the middle stint. I don't think that's the case. He must have made some sort of mistake somewhere along the way, as Philippe Alliot has now been lapped by Ayrton Senna. He's lost quite a bit of time to the Brazilian, so much so that we've closed up on the next lap, all over the back now of our teammate Philippe Alliot. Can we do a move down the inside into turn 5, just like how we were looking down the inside of Fabrizio Barbazza? We can't quite get through on our teammate, but we're boxing at the end of this lap for our second stop of the race. We see in the Scuderia Italia really holding up Philippe Alliot. We kind of have to get past here. He's kind of forced to. I wasn't really planning on making an overtake, but I've opted to stay out as I heard that my teammate was also boxing at the end of this lap. So strategic blunder there from Larrousse. Fortunately, I saved them from a double stack, as that's Rubens Barrichello on board. Very low revs. It must be a gearbox failure for the Brazilian, and he will be another addition to the plethora of retirements already in the South African Grand Prix. Devastating for him on his debut. He was almost certain to score some championship points. We boxed them at the end of lap 44, right behind race leader Ayrton Senna. And yeah, it's been a fairly decent race so far. We're going to be momentarily up to 7th place, getting past Rubens Barrichello before a couple of cars go past us, as we are serving our second stop. Hopefully that we don't come out ahead of Ayrton Senna, because it's going to require us to let him through again. Fortunately, though, we do get out behind him and ahead of Philippe Alliot. 8-second stop, but those that were eagle-eyed enough to realise that's not enough fuel to reach the end of the race. I don't know what the team is doing, but they've for some reason not put enough fuel in the car. So I started to try and go into fuel saving mode, try and save a bit of fuel, and in turn I let Philippe Alliot through and try and hold up Christian Fittipaldi and try some fuel saving measures throughout the next couple of laps. But this is really disappointing for us. We're going to need to make another stop in this race, and it was looking possible for us to maybe score a championship point in this race. By the end of lap 46, though, we do admit defeat and we just come in for that extra couple of litres of fuel. Very frustrating on our debut race, as we, after that first stint, after the mistakes that we'd had in the first 20-ish laps, we'd really come into our own. But unfortunately, that pit stop's put us down into 12th place, on board with Riccardo Patrese now. And that's a brake failure for the Italian. Fortunately, he's not hit any barriers in any form of very hard way. And fortunately, he is okay. That's going to open up the podium to literally anyone, essentially, as Ayrton Senna now leads from Michael Schumacher after the final set of stops. Jean Alesi, despite his crash earlier on, is up to 3rd place, ahead of Yerky Yarvaleto on Sauber's debut. Michael Andretti's up to 5th, with Derek Warwick in 6th in the Footwork. He'll be hoping to possibly score a championship point on his return, of course, not being in the sport for quite a couple of years. As we make our way into the top 10, thanks to Riccardo Patrese's retirement. And who knows, Derek Warwick, he's going very slowly, just as I said he could possibly score points. That's a very ill-sounding footwork, possible gearbox failure, and that seemed like some sort of contact between him and another car. It's Philippe Alliot, my teammate, who he collided with, side by side into the right-hander. And Felipe, baby, you need to stay cool. You can just fetch home the points. You do not need to push this. But nevertheless, he's not lost any positions, not got any damage from that, fortunately, as our race is going to come to an end, slamming into the barriers in the downhill section in the middle sector, and that's going to be us. I'm pretty certain that's going to be us out of this race. We do pull away to see if we can carry on, and we'll see if we can make, well, if we can still reach the checkered flag, essentially, on board then. Oh, and we just clip the grass on the inside, and that's enough to unsettle the rear of the car. and slammers straight into the barriers. A very unfortunate crash there, and it's and that's Andrea De Cesaris just going past. He's just lost his rear wing trying to get past us. Is this like a similar incident with Eddie Irvine, I'm assuming? And it most certainly is. I don't really feel like that's my fault, to be honest, as he just drove himself into the wall, essentially, as we realise the suspension damage is pretty bad, and we just pull it over to the side of the road. Quite a frustrating weekend, all things considered, so close to the end. And yeah, very, very annoying, especially since I was kind of pushing a little bit more to try and make up the gap after that unscheduled pit stop. But we see Ayrton Senna now 10 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher. The German is closing in with 8 laps remaining. You'd have to wait another 35 seconds though to see third place Jean Alesi, with Yuki Yarvaleto now in 4th place ahead of Michael Andretti, who does have to still serve that 10-second time penalty at the end of the race. Philippe Alliot is fairly close to him in that battle for 5th place. It would be interesting though if Michael Andretti can bridge enough of a gap ahead of my teammate, as we now see Michele Alboreto. That's a brake failure into turn 3, and he's going to be out of this race with so few laps remaining. Disappointing on his first race for Scuderia Italia. Aguri Suzuki up next, another mechanical problem, engine failure in the back of the Mugen-Honda, almost taking out Jean Alesi, and that is going to be the end of the Japanese driver's day. And Jean Alesi could not reach the end of the race with his fuel. He had to stop earlier on, and has just been essentially just had a full tank of fuel since the early stages, as we now see Ayrton Senna round the final corner for the final time. Since the Williams retirements, it's been easy sailing for the Brazilian as he wins the 1993 South African Grand Prix. It's Ayrton Senna then that takes top honours here for the South African Grand Prix. Following the Williams woes, he never really looked back, and he takes victory ahead of Michael Schumacher by 6.5 seconds. A late race charge from the German was not enough to stop Ayrton Senna from taking the victory. However, Jean Alesi, despite his incident with one of the Scuderia Italias, claims a brilliant 3rd place ahead of Yuki Yarvaleto on Sauber's debut. A brilliant race for the Swiss outfit. Michael Andretti just gets the advantage over Philippe Alliot following his 10-second penalty, almost dropping him behind the Frenchman. Fittipaldi and Barbazza, both the Minardi drivers, just missing out on points in 7th and 8th respectively, with Luca Badoa being the last driver to reach the checkered flag. Aguri Suzuki and Michele Alboreto both classified despite not finishing the race. Then we have the retirements of Andrea De Cesaris and Jaden Harrison, as well as quite a couple others. Derek Warwick with a gearbox failure late on while in the points, as well as Riccardo Patrese, who was looking dead set for a podium finish until his brakes failed. Barrichello, Zanardi, Damon Hill, another big name, out of the race, as well as Wendlinger, Blundell and Brundle. Both Ligiers out within a single lap of each other. Berger out with a gearbox issue, as well as Eddie Irvine out following Jean Alesi's incident with the Scuderia Italia. Alain Prost will be disappointed to see his race end all the way on lap 2, with Katayama and Johnny Herbert both out on the first lap. The Drivers' Championship remains as it was in the race. Ayrton Senna 4 clear of Michael Schumacher, Alesi, Yarvaleto, Andretti and Alliot in the top 6 in the championship, with McLaren leading the constructors by 6 points ahead of Benetton. McLaren were the only team to get both drivers into the points. Ferrari, Sauber and Larrousse complete the top 5, with the rest of the teams yet to score so far. That has been the South African Grand Prix. I hope you enjoyed, especially this live commentary video. This is the first one I've done, so it'd be interesting to hear your guys' feedback. So yeah, that's going to be all from me in today's video, and goodbye.